Well, good evening, everybody. We're here, Jeremy and I. Jeremy's running a little late, so he's just getting organized. And I just wanted to welcome everyone. Welcome to Lives of the Saints, episode 24. And I can't remember the names of the saints. I put them in there. Saint Blaise, I think.
Yep, Saint Blaise, Saint Anthimus.
Anthimus and Saint Nicholas, Archbishop of Japan. I couldn't put equal to the apostles because they don't give you enough characters.
Oh yeah, that's okay.
For the title, right. So I chose that part.
I can't find Saint Anthimus.
Saint Anthimus?
Yeah. Okay. Maybe it was Saturday. No, hold on. No. Why can't I find him? Okay, well, I'll just put his name in. How about that?
That's what I'm doing. I have barking
yes,
dogs.
Okay, right found that. And the last one is St. Nicholas, not the Christmas one. Not the wonder worker. Ah, there we go. Okay. I got the saints lined up. You got a resting dog. You must have fed them this time.
No, they're not fed yet. They don't get fed till around 8 o'clock.
Oh wow.
Well, it's because 2 of them are on thyroid medication and they have to have their thyroid pills 12 hours apart.
Oh.
So it's kind of,
well, maybe don't sleep in so much, lazy bones.
I have to get
You're
up
one
at
of those
6
sleeping farmers. I get it. Although you gotta wait for the sun to come up in Canada. That's a fair,
Well, it's not up at. Well, actually, it's getting there now at 8 o'clock. It's coming up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, okay, that's a little more understandable.
Yeah,
you live up north.
I usually get up at 6. Actually, I was up at 6. Well, the other morning I was up at 4.
Yeah.
And yeah, so just depends on how tired I am in the evening, and then if I go to bed early, I wake up early. I don't need much sleep, but yeah, since it's, being on this carnivore diet, I used to sleep like I could easily do 12 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. I had to do 10 for sure.
Wow.
And now it's 7 hours. Huh. And, I wake up. I often will wake up and then lay there for 20 minutes. And if I don't fall back to sleep, then I just get up because that means it's time. I'm awake.
Yep.
And the other morning, because I went to bed at like 8 o'clock in the evening.
Yeah.
And I woke up and it was 3:30 and I was like, no.
Let's see.
Way too early. But anyway, it was fine. I just went through the day.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yep. We get up around 4:45 or 5 most mornings.
Oh.
I think Sunday we sleep in until about 6.
Do you go to bed real early?
We're usually around 9.
Okay.
Between 8 and 9. My wife goes to bed around 8, and I usually sometimes I'll go to bed and just read in bed, but I usually fall asleep between 9 and around 9:30, I guess. So I'm about a 7-hour a night person. That's
me
right.
too now. It's 7 hours and that's it.
Yeah, that works best for me.
The Swiss farmers, they wake up really early to milk the cows. And then they always, after they're done their chores, I guess it's lunchtime. Is that how it goes? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We had a friend, he was a young guy and he was a farmer. And after lunch, he slept.
Yeah. That was the same, like all of the people my grandparents' age. That's what they did.
Yeah.
They would get up early, go do chores, get some stuff done, come in. They called it dinner. Was it like 1:30, 1 o'clock, 1:30? Because lunch was just kind of like leftovers from breakfast. The little snack. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then so dinner was at around 1, and then they would eat, a big dinner, and then take a nap, and then get up around 3:30, go out, do evening chores, and then you'd come in and have supper. And supper was usually really light, bread and milk or
The
toast.
main meal of the day was always dinner time or lunchtime in Switzerland.
Yeah.
I mean,
So-
most of Europe traditionally was like that until feminism wrenched the mother out of the home.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
Yeah, really. Hi, Cody.
Cody.
Joy.
Oh man, no one will get this reference, but one of my favorite. There was a cartoon series called Frisky Dingo. It was made by the same guys who made Archer later on. So if you're familiar with Archer and you've never watched Frisky Dingo, go watch Frisky Dingo. It's hilarious. And but there was this one character in there who there was a guy who he basically framed and they were in court, and the guy's like, and the guy in court is Cody, and he's like, Cody, can I borrow your snowmobiles while you're in prison? So good, because he kind of knew what he did, but he kind of didn't. It was hilarious.
Come on,
It's
dude.
pretty funny.
Make up your mind.
Oh, somebody's around barking.
You know what? I saw. I came home from town the other day, and there were like massive cougar tracks on my driveway.
Ooh,
Yeah,
wow.
and it's been really cold, and it's starting to warm up, and that's when all the wildlife gets, stops hunkering down and is hungry.
Yeah, start looking around.
Yeah, they don't move much when it's really cold. And
right. Relatable.
So, yeah. My dogs get to sleep a lot when it's really cold.
Yeah.
Well,
it got particularly cold here today. We didn't have a lot. We have no snow. It snows in the mountains, but it's just not hitting the valley. But it was freezing today. I went for a walk after work, and it was cold because the wind. Yeah. We had wind today. It was chilly. It was only about 25, and then we had wind. So it was, the wind chill is down around 10. So it was very chilly. So that's like negative 300 in Canada.
We had minus 27 this morning Celsius.
Okay, so it was about minus 12 with the wind chill here
for you.
So it's pretty chilly. Yeah. I'm soft though. I'm an office worker, so I'm not used to.
And it doesn't really get that cold very often, right?
No, it doesn't. No, we maybe have it usually doesn't get that cold. Maybe 1 or 2 days a year. So pretty chilly, but the wind is what made it extra.
Yeah, the wind makes it even worse. Like I was just looking at temperatures for like central Canada, like the prairie provinces, and Regina, Winnipeg, and whatever else is down there in that area.
Can we say Regina on the internet now?
Can
we say it on YouTube? Is that okay now? I'm sorry, that was a dumb joke.
Regina.
Yeah, no, I know. That was my middle school joke for the night. Sorry.
With the wind chill, the temperatures there were minus 45 degrees Celsius.
Oh my goodness, that's cold. Yeah. That's cold even in like America units.
Yeah, we had that last winter here for like 2 weeks, and I've got this really, really old horse. Hi, Joshua. Nice to have you again.
So here's fun. Negative 40 Celsius is negative 40 Fahrenheit.
There you go.
That's
where they match. Don't they match at 0 too?
What's that? No, they don't match at 0. Oh no, your 0 is our 32 Fahrenheit.
Oh right.
Yeah, but at negative 40 they match, so that's fun.
Yeah, so it's negative 45 in Regina and Winnipeg, and Winnipeg are freaking cold.
That's where it's cold enough. You can take a glass of hot water, like a mug of hot water, and you throw it in the air, and it will just turn into powder.
Yeah.
If you haven't been somewhere where you can do that, you should, because it's awesome. and cold, and don't stay outside very long.
And don't touch metal with your bare hands.
Yeah, and you have to like. I worked a couple of winters in Wyoming, and there were a few nights where we had to leave you have to leave the truck running all night, and you have to leave it in neutral so that the transmission will spin as well. Otherwise, you'll go to start it, but you won't be able to get it in gear because the transmission oil would gel. Yeah, it was crazy.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was really cold. I mean, it's probably Canada. It was similar to Canada cold. It was like we were working between 40 and 60 below zero. So it was pretty chilly. I mean, in the morning, it would warm up to like -30 or -20.
Very cold. 52 degrees in Southern California.
Poor thing. That's Gulf weather.
You know what this is, Joshua? This is the world's smallest record playing.
Yeah, right.
Crying a river.
No, seriously, like we had a few days last week where we got up in the 50s and 60s. Golf courses were packed.
I hate it.
Yeah. So
I'm actually not looking forward to the thaw because everything just turns to mud here. Like the whole month of March, it's like gross, so gross. Yeah. But anyway. And so looks like we got a crowd.
Yeah, we're ready. We got a crowd.
We don't really exceed these numbers, so
yeah.
Looks like everybody's here.
Sweet.
So yeah.
Welcome. We should do roll call.
They already checked in. Everybody checked
good. Yeah, that's true. We
Wonderful.
Did. All right. I'll say a quick prayer.
Thank you.
Let me find it. We're not organized today. I'm sorry. I was late.
It's all good, Jeremy.
Okay. Here we go. O Lord Jesus Christ, open the eyes of my heart that I may hear your word and understand and do your will, for I am a sojourner upon the earth. Hide not your commandments from me, but open my eyes that I may perceive the wonders of your law. Speak unto me the hidden and secret things of your wisdom. On you do I set my hope, O my God, that you shall enlighten my mind and understanding with the light of your knowledge, not only to cherish those things which are written, but to do them. For you are the enlightenment of those who lie in darkness, and from you comes every good deed and every gift. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Jeremy.
Sure. That was written by St. John Chrysostom.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't done that one before.
No, that was a new one. I was listening.
That's a good one. Mm-hmm. Okay, so St. Blaise is first. Yes. Okay. So he is commemorated today. Today is St. Blaise's name day, or the day he's commemorated. Mm-hmm. Hieromartyr Blaise, Bishop of Sebaste. And I'm sorry, Eugene, forgive me up front, because there's some Russian names in here. We're going to do our best. Right. Hieromartyr Blaise, Blasius, Bishop of Sebaste, was known for his righteous and devout life. Unanimously chosen by the people, he was consecrated Bishop of Sebaste. This occurred during the reign of the Roman emperors. Oh, it's not Russian. I'm sorry. I was confused. St. Anthimus is Russian. So we're back in Greek. Okay. This occurred during the reign of the Roman emperors Diocletian and Licinius, fierce persecutors of Christians. St. Blaise encouraged his flock, visited the imprisoned, and gave support to the martyrs. Many hid themselves from the persecutors by going off to desolate and solitary places. St. Blaise also hid himself away on Mount Argios, where he lived in a cave. Wild beasts came up to him and meekly waited until the saint finished his prayer and blessed them. The saint also healed sick animals by laying his hands upon them. The refuge of the saint was discovered by servants of the governor Agrilas, who had come to capture wild beasts to loose on the Christian martyrs. The servants reported to their master that Christians were hiding on the mountain, and he gave orders to arrest them. But those sent out found there only the Bishop of Sebaste. Glorifying God who had summoned him to this exploit, St. Blaise followed the soldiers. Along the way, the saint healed the sick and worked other miracles. Thus, a destitute widow complained to him of her misfortune. A wolf had carried off a small pig, her only possession. The bishop smiled and said to her, "Do not weep. Your pig will be returned to you." To the astonishment of everyone, the wolf came running back and returned his prey unharmed. Agrilas, greeting the bishop with words of deceit, called him a companion of the gods. The saint answered the greeting, but he called the gods devils. Then they beat him and led him off to prison. On the next day, they subjected the saint to tortures again. When they led him back to the prison, 7 women followed behind and gathered up the drops of blood. They arrested them and tried to compel them to worship the idols. The women pretended to consent to this and said that first they needed to wash the idols in the waters of a lake. They took the idols and threw them in a very deep part of the lake, and after this, the Christians were fiercely tortured. I love that trick worked. Oh, we're just going to wash them. Oh, okay. The saints stoically endured the torments. Strengthened by the grace of God, their bodies were transformed and became white as snow. One of the women had 2 young sons who implored their mother to help them attain the kingdom of heaven, and she entrusted them to the care of St. Blaise. The 7 holy women were beheaded. St. Blaise was again brought before Agrilas, and again he unflinchingly confessed his faith in Christ. The governor ordered that the martyr be thrown into a lake. The saint, going down to the water, signed himself with the sign of the cross, and he walked on it as though on dry land. Addressing the pagans standing about on shore, he challenged them to come to him while calling on the help of their gods. 68 men of the governor's retinue entered the water and immediately drowned. The saint, however, heeding the angel who had appeared to him, returned to shore. Agrilas was in a rage, losing his finest servants, and he gave orders to behead St. Blaise and the 2 sons of the woman martyr entrusted to him. Before his death, the martyr prayed for the whole world, and especially for those honoring his memory. This occurred in about the year 316. The relics of the high martyr Blaise were brought to the West during the time of the Crusades, and portions of the relics are preserved in many of the lands of Europe, and his memory traditionally honored there on February 3rd. We pray to St. Blaise for the health of domestic animals and for protection from wild beasts.
Oh, well, he's a good one for us today.
Yeah,
I've got
you need
big cat out there that's prowling around.
Yeah, it'll keep the cougar placated, hopefully.
Yes.
Yeah, well, may we have the intercessions of St. Blaise.
Yes.
Okay, next one. Saint Anthimus. And he is Russian, although his name doesn't sound Russian.
That's a really sad story. I got to think about that for a minute. Just wait before you go on to the next one.
Okay.
Because, yeah, they were... now I'm starting to recognize the names of some of these Roman emperors who were just brutally persecuting Christians.
Yes, Diocletian.
Top
of the list.
And then isn't there a Julian the Apostate too, or something?
Yeah, he was later, but yes, definitely, or right around. Yeah, he was right after Diocletian was Julian the Apostate.
Yeah.
Or maybe I think there was one in between that wasn't. Anyway, yeah, right around that time.
Yeah.
Julian the Apostate was he went to school with Saint Basil, I think, or Saint John Chrysostom, one of those two, and he ended up like bitter and angry, and he was mad that the Roman Empire had been converted to Christianity, and he wanted to switch it back to paganism.
He was nostalgic.
Yeah. Yes. And he also tried to. He also started taxing the Jews again and wanted to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem to appease the Jews and like to bring the Jews on his side.
Yeah.
At first, I thought that said Basil the Great was a farce, and I was like, "Whoa, oh, my friend, please do not say that." But
are we doing new calendar, or we're doing new?
This is according to new calendar. So these are he's being commemorated today according to the new calendar.
Yeah.
I'm in Antiochian tradition, so we're new calendar guys.
Yeah.
For now, anyway, who knows what will happen?
If it does, it won't happen in your lifetime. I can guarantee.
Yeah, no, it takes 500 years for anything to change. Thank God. Thank God. We're
I'm good with it.
anti-innovation.
I'm good with it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I just, just imagine these people hiding. And so do you get the sense from that story that St. Blaise actually put himself forward as like a big prize because he was a bishop and to protect others? Or was he the only one up there?
It said he was the only one up there.
It did.
I mean, I think maybe they came across him and assumed that
they were looking for Christians.
Yeah.
According to the story, because they
were looking for animals to unloose on the Christians.
That's right. Okay.
And they found him accidentally.
Right.
So.
Okay. All right. And why do you think the women were collecting the blood? Were they keeping it as relic, or?
Yeah. When they led him back to the prison, 7 women followed behind and gathered up the drops of blood. Yes. That would definitely be like collecting a relic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
All right. Okay. Go on.
Okay. We will go back to here and erase that. And this and this. And Saint Anthimus. Saint Anthimus of Chios. I'm going to go with Chios. Saint Anthimus was born on July 1st, 1869 in the vicinity of Saint Luke at Livadion, Chios. His righteous and virtuous parents, Constantine and Argyro, took care to give their child a Christian education. The young Argyrios was endowed by the Holy Spirit with the spirit of wisdom. He was foreordained by God to shine forth as a chosen vessel and to become a great guide who would lead others to Christ. His entire childhood development and upbringing was apparently due to the strong and profound influence of his Christian family environment. On Sundays, Argyrios and his family attended services at the monastery of Neamoni. When he was 8 years old, he met Saint Nectarios, who was a deacon at the time. After conversing with the young Argyrios, he said to Igumen Pacomios, "Elder, do you see that child? Someday he will become a saint."
Wait, Jeremy, just a quick question. Cody's asking.
This is not Russian. He's not Russian. I'm sorry.
1869?
Yep, 1869. That's right.
That's when this was. Okay. Yeah, good.
Yep.
Sorry for the
Yeah, and I'm sorry. I was confusing him with another story. The last one, St. Nicholas, is Russian. That's where I was confused. I'm sorry. I keep thinking everyone's from Russia, but they're not. So St. Nectarios, he mentions he met him. St. Nectarios, there's a movie that just came out about his life called Man of God, with a cameo by Mickey Rourke. But
I haven't seen that one yet.
It's a beautiful movie. That's really, really beautiful movie. He was accused of doing things that he never did and never defended himself. And then at the end of his life, they realized that he had falsely accused him. But he basically lived his life in exile after being accused of like embezzling money as a bishop. So,
wow.
Argyrios had little formal education and was limited to simple elementary school knowledge. So with no theoretical knowledge of worldly acclaim, but with a good disposition, spiritual discernment, and with a particularly intense desire for the spiritual life, he advanced unwaveringly in the virtuous life with the precious gift of unshakable faith. Divine love led him to renounce the world and its noisy turmoil and to enter the monastic state where his virtues shone forth. The starting point for him to follow the path of monasticism was his visit to the skeet of the Holy Fathers of Chios for the restoration of his own wonder-working icon of the All-Holy Virgin, the Helper, which he had received from his mother. Since that time, this icon remained an integral part of his entire life. The Theotokos became a source of inexhaustible strength for him in his later difficult struggles, and she was also a fount of refreshment and respite. His guide in the ascetical life was the venerable elder Pachomios of Scetis, by whom he was tonsured into the small schema, and who renamed him Anthimus. He submitted to elder Pachomios, and through unceasing prayer and fasting, and by the harsh struggles which he undertook with God's goodwill, he grew great in asceticism and in virtue. His physical and spiritual struggles left him exhausted and ill. So, with the blessing of Father Pachomios, he returned to his home in order to recuperate. Saint Anthimus, however, did not abandon his struggles. Once his health was partially restored, he retired to a small, isolated cell on his father's estates in Levadia Chios and continued his spiritual contests. At the same time, he worked as a shoemaker in order to help his poor parents and to show mercy to those who were afflicted. In his cell, by unceasing prayer and by studying the lives of the great ascetics, he was strengthened and he made progress in his spiritual formation. But he also provoked the demonic rage of the evil one. He struggled severely and effectively, conducting multifaceted and victorious contests against the evil one with ardent prayer, and each day he ascended the blessed ladder of virtues and holiness. In 1909, at the age of 40, he was tonsured into the great schema by hieromonk Andronicus, the successor of Father Pachomios. The virtuous ascetic Anthimus was a chosen vessel and was ready for the office of the priesthood, but the local bishop refused to ordain him because of his lack of education. In 1910, he was invited to Adramyttium in Asia Minor by his godfather, Stephan Diomataris, for this purpose. The saint's ordination by the Bishop of Smyrna was not a typical event. In his case, there were signs of divine approval following the ordination. Earthquake, lightning, thunder, and a cataclysmic rainfall occurred at that sacred hour. The vigil lamps swayed, and one of them fell down. After the ordination, there was calm, stillness, and joy from God. These physical phenomena revealed and bore witness to the fact that God was pleased by his ordination. As long as he remained in Adramyttium, he shone forth in a dazzling way because of his virtue and holiness, by which he healed those in the region who were possessed by demons, something his fellow priests were unable to do. His spiritual radiance stirred up the passion of jealousy in his co-celebrants. Wishing to free them from this passion, the saint left Adramyttium in 1911 and went to Mount Athos, where the Hagiorite monks freely bestowed many honors upon him. Returning to Chios, he was assigned as the priest for the home for lepers, which became a new setting for his virtues and charitable activities. The icon of the Panagia Epaphanti, the protectress of the hospital for lepers, focuses on all her acts of kindness. The Lady Theotokos, through the prayers of Saint Anthimus, performed countless miracles of healing and the infirmities of the faithful, both those whose names are known and those who remain anonymous. This institution for unfortunate lepers became a spiritual center of physical and mental health. His entire ministry at the Home for Lepers shows his deepest faith and his very valuable contributions. Here the greatness of the saint is revealed. As the priest of that church, Saint Anthimus was always found with the lepers. He ate with them, he talked with them, and he communed them with the spotless mysteries. After the divine liturgy, he rested. In that hallowed atmosphere, he envisioned the establishment of a monastery to shelter nuns who had fled there from Asia Minor following the exchange of populations from 1922 to 1924. So his dreams moved forward toward their fulfillment. In 1927, after he had a vision of the Theotokos, he received permission to build such a monastery. He also built the magnificent temple dedicated to the icon of the Mother of God, the Helper, in 1930. From that time, he settled in the monastery filled with devotion to the Most Holy Theotokos, and there he advanced in his life of asceticism, filled with a multitude of virtues and holiness through the intercession and help of the Theotokos. And he shepherded his flock with great affection and love, strengthening and consoling them with his sweet and simple speech, healing the sicknesses and afflictions of those who had recourse to him. After his lifelong ministry, now at the age of 90, fully ripe and full of days, with a dignity which was reminiscent of the great ascetics of the desert, he celebrated his last divine liturgy on January 27th, 1960. A few days later, he reposed in peace. St. Anthimus was glorified by the Church of Constantinople on August 13th, 1992.
Wow. That was a good one too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I had some feeling that there would be a little bit of stretching in there for our Protestant viewers. A lot of references to Theotokos and how she was working miracles through the prayers of Saint Anthimus, and but we're sharing lives of saints.
Yeah, and
but here we are.
there's a lot of them that were visited and guided by and had great devotion to the Theotokos.
Yeah.
Many.
Yeah. And she's the protectress of Mount Athos to this day. She is actually the one who chose Mount Athos and said that Christ had given it to her as a garden and that she could protect it, and that's where the monks are. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's where not all of the monks, but that's where a lot of monasteries are now. So, okay, so we'll go to St. Nicholas, but not the one from
December, not the one from December the 6th.
Correct. This is another St. Nicholas.
I just happen to know that day because it's a big one in Switzerland.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
All right. So we have St. Nicholas, equal of the apostles, Archbishop of Japan. And he's commemorated on February 16th. So all three of the saints for today's episode are commemorated this week. So we haven't done that the whole time either. So that's kind of what's tying these all together.
Mm-hmm.
These were actually the saints so my priest sends out an email every week with the saints of that week, and he kind of showcases one saint most days. Some days he doesn't include one, but all of these came from his email. So I said, all right, well, if Father Paul wants to share them with me, then I'll share them with everyone else.
Yeah.
Anyway, St. Nicholas, equal of the apostles, Archbishop of Japan. St. Nicholas, enlightener of Japan, was born Ivan, and I'm not going to do the last name, on August 1st, 1836, in the village of Eugene. You're going to have to help me with that one too. Belsk district in Smolensk diocese, where his father served as deacon. At the age of 5, he lost his mother. He completed the Belsk religious school and afterwards the Smolensk Theological Seminary. In 1857, Ivan Kosatkin entered the St. Petersburg Theological Academy. On June 24th, 1860, in the Academy Temple of the 12 Apostles, Bishop Nectarius tonsured him with the name Nicholas. On June 29th, the feast of the foremost apostles, Peter and Paul, the monk Nicholas was ordained deacon. The next day, on the altar feast of the Academy Church, he was ordained to the holy priesthood. Later, at his request, Father Nicholas was assigned to Japan as head of the consular church in the city of Hakodate. At first, the preaching of the gospel in Japan seemed completely impossible. In Father Nicholas's own words, quote, "The Japanese of the time looked upon foreigners as beasts and on Christianity as a villainous sect to which only villains and sorcerers could belong," unquote. He spent 8 years in studying the country, the language, manners, and customs of the people among whom he would preach. In 1868, the flock of Father Nicholas numbered about 20 Japanese. At the end of 1869, Hieromonk Nicholas reported in person to the synod in Petersburg about his work. A decision was made on January 14th, 1870, to form a special Russian spiritual mission for preaching the word of God among the pagan Japanese. Father Nicholas was elevated to the rank of archimandrite, which means a priest monk, and appointed as head of this mission. Returning to Japan after 2 years in Russia, he transferred some of the responsibility for the Hakodate flock to Hieromonk Anatolius and began his missionary work in Tokyo. In 1871, there was a persecution of Christians in Hakodate. Many were arrested, among them the first Japanese Orthodox priest, Paul Sawabe. In 1837, only in 1837 did the persecution abate somewhat. 1873. Sorry, thank you. That's dyslexia kicking in. Only in 1873 did the persecution abate somewhat, and the free teaching of Christianity became possible. In this year, Archimandrite Nicholas began the construction of a stone building in Tokyo, which housed a church, a school for 50 men, and later a religious school, which became a seminary in 1878. In 1874, Bishop Paul of Kamchatka arrived in Tokyo to ordain as priests several Japanese candidates recommended by Archimandrite Nicholas. At the Tokyo mission, there were 4 schools for catechists, for women, for servers, and for church servers, and a seminary. At Hakodate, there were 2 separate schools for boys and girls. In the second half of 1877, the mission began regular publication of the journal called Church Herald. By the year 1878, there were already 4,115 Christians in Japan, and there were a number of Christian communities, church services, and classes in Japanese. The publication of religious and moral books permitted the mission to attain such results in a short time. Archimandrite Nicholas petitioned the Holy Synod in December of 1878 to provide a bishop for Japan. Archimandrite Nicholas was consecrated bishop on March 30th, 1880, in the Trinity Cathedral of Alexander Nevsky Lavra. Returning to Japan, he resumed his apostolic work with increased fervor. He completed construction on the Cathedral of the Resurrection of Christ in Tokyo. He translated the service books and compiled a special Orthodox theological dictionary in the Japanese language. Great hardship befell the saint and his flock at the time of the Russo-Japanese War. For his ascetic labor during these difficult years, he was elevated to the rank of Archbishop. In 1911, half a century had passed since the young Hieromonk Nicholas had first set foot on Japanese soil. At that time, there were 33,017 Christians in 266 communities of the Japanese Orthodox Church, including 1 archbishop, 1 bishop, 35 priests, 6 deacons, 14 singing instructors, and 116 catechists. On February 3rd, 1912, Archbishop Nicholas departed peacefully to the Lord at the age of 76. The Holy Synod of the Russian Orthodox Church glorified him on April 10th, 1970, since the saint had been long honored in Japan as a righteous man and a prayerful intercessor before the Lord. Mm-hmm. So he is considered the enlightener of Japan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's always Cody. That's always a beautiful thing when that happens. Yeah. That was a good one too.
Yeah, that's it for tonight.
So I didn't realize there was a Japanese Orthodox Church.
Yes.
Until a couple of years ago, and that's super interesting to me. Because
I was actually talking to a young man who's in Japan. I met him. I don't know where I met him, on forums, or he reached out to me, I think, because I was on a video here in this little corner or something. But anyway, we became friends on Steam, and he started talking to me, and he was telling me it's quite challenging to be a young, not Japanese person in Japan and Orthodox. He was like, because you just don't fit really anywhere. If you're, because he was looking for, he wanted to get married, and he just said they were very skeptical and thought that I was there for the wrong reasons or whatever. It was very difficult for him. He was quite lonely. I still pray for him, but we haven't talked in a long time.
Is he still? Oh, you don't know if he's there still?
Yeah, I haven't talked to him for a bit. I should reach out to him on Steam. But yeah, no, he said, he said the church there is very beautiful, and they have the whole Japanese kind of integration of the Japanese culture in their buildings and in their iconography and everything. So cool. He said it's quite beautiful, but yeah, he said it's there. It's because they're traditional, they're very skeptical of an outsider and very wary.
Well, I think, don't they have pretty strict immigration laws in Japan?
Yeah. I mean, he's legal. He's not illegal. He's legal.
But I'm just saying, like, as a country, they're very
yes, not interested in immigrants.
Not really.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so maybe you can be there with the work visa.
That's what he was doing.
Get renewed,
So,
but
yeah, he was saying the tradition there is beautiful.
Yeah, I did. I remember looking up the church in Tokyo. Whoops. And also, just looking a little bit at the Japanese Orthodox Church. I found it kind of fascinating because it had been there for some time, and Japan had always been kind of hostile towards Christianity, right?
Yeah. Well, they had been interacting with the Jesuits and then the Protestants since like the early 1500s. So have you ever read Shogun or seen the movie?
Oh gosh, Richard Chamberlain, remember that guy?
Yeah, the older one. Yeah, there's a new Shogun and it's actually really well done.
I haven't seen that one.
Oh, the new one was phenomenal. I mean, I'm sorry, I should warn everyone. It's extremely violent and not for the faint of heart, especially the first couple of episodes, because you're being introduced to the traditional Japanese culture from the eyes of an English Protestant at the time, like a Protestant, sailor, and he's showing up in this culture and it was completely foreign and completely alien and seemed very brutal and very capricious, and then as he got acquainted with the culture, he realized that maybe he had it upside down. So anyway, it's a really interesting kind of revelation of two different cultural worldviews and the what it means to be just, what it means to be good and a good person, and what honor means, and how his views of that changed over after being living into the Japanese culture and not being completely assimilated, but definitely being honored and given a lot of education and interaction with their culture. So I mean, it's a fiction book, but it takes place right out. So the Jesuits had been there for a few years and had started trading and wanted a monopoly on it, and then the British, or the English, I should say, the English Protestants followed them and figured out how to get there and came and wanted to kind of break up the monopoly.
Right.
So
yeah, I remember I watched
tensions as well in the book.
I didn't say this, but I think I watched Shogun when it came out. Like,
I believe it. Yeah.
Yeah. I dropped a link. If anybody wants to jump in, feel most welcome to do that. And I mean, we can talk about just about anything. I have something completely different on my mind.
Okay.
I've been following
something completely different.
Something completely different. I've been following following the whole discussion with Michael Martin. Michael Martin had Sebastian Morello on his podcast yesterday, I think it was. I haven't quite finished it. I've got 10 minutes left, I think. Martin Shaw also chimed in. Where to start? Oh, we could start right now, Joshua. You could jump in.
Yeah, hop into our stream.
We're,
hop into the stream. You click on that link and follow the directions. Set up a little account, and come in.
Yeah.
And
this is Grail country. This is
got a
part of the corner.
Yeah. If you've got a camera, then hop in. Even if you don't have a camera, if you just have microphone.
You gotta at least show me your. No, for strangers, I need a camera on.
Oh, okay, got it. That's Sherry's rules.
Well, it's not just me, actually. It's been
some
crazy moments in that regard.
I forgot about that. I forgot about that. So come on in.
Jump in.
Join us. And
we can talk about it's Grail country. So I was going to talk about knights.
Okay.
Knights in shining armor. I mean.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's worth talking about. I haven't even formulated my thoughts yet, but it's just been really interesting. And it helps me to kind of process what I've been hearing from others.
Okay.
If I can talk about it. Do you mind?
Not at all. I'd love to listen.
Well, Michael Martin did a thing on his channel where he talked about monks and knights, and he kind of wished that there would be, more knights in the world. And I left a comment on that video and saying, well, as a woman, I'm not so sure about this perspective because I'm just a little worried about some guys figuring they're going to jump up off their couch, shake off the Cheeto dust and grab a sword. You know what I mean? It's like
guilty as charged.
Oh, look, McMo.
Ah, hey, McMo.
So nice to see you.
Hello.
Welcome, brother.
I'm in my backyard. My wife has gone on a girl trip, and it's just me and my dog, but it's raining and he's been cooped up all day. But I got to stand guard and make sure he doesn't get into the fallen trees, because if he goes behind the fallen trees, he can get out of our yard. And I don't want to chase him down in the rain. So instead of chasing him down in the rain, I'm standing in the rain.
Yeah, right. You don't have to run.
Yeah. Well, I think I could weave it into. I miss Sherry. I heard her bring up Michael Martin, but I missed kind of everything after that. But
are you gonna try to weave?
I think I could weave. I think I could weave it, but
what do you think I was going to say? I haven't even said anything yet.
Well, that's true. That's true. Well, I came on to talk about something completely different and bring up my own kind of little twist. But
let's talk about what you want to talk about, because I'm still in the middle of processing my thoughts anyway. So
sorry, I cut out right when you said what you wanted me to talk about.
I said, just talk about whatever it was you wanted to talk about, McMo. Can you hear me still?
Yes, I can hear you. So
I'm still in the middle of my, thought processes. So
okay. Well, the only thing I was going to try to do to weave it in was say like the knight would be like a samurai, or how does the idea of the samurai blend with the knight? And but that hits on my other point, which is the cultural differences that are at least perceived aesthetically, like in art and music and visual and architecture and the whole thing, basically aesthetics. Because and what when I knew I had to come on was I wanted to talk about two things, which was one, I saw a Tradcath Twitter profile post a picture of Japanese churches, Catholic churches, and it was incredibly pared down. It was not covered in icons or statues or relics. It was very, dare I say, Protestant looking in its scarcity. But beautiful still. You know, it wasn't just like an empty room, but um, it was much emptier than the kind of memeified, um, maximalism of some Orthodox churches and some Catholic churches on the inside. Um, and then I also wanted to see if we could talk about, because of that cultural differences, the way in which I've seen a lot of people who I look up to and respect their ideas in theology and philosophy have the worst takes in the world about Kendrick Lamar during the halftime show. And so that's just very interesting to me too, because I think that there's a cultural difference happening. Um, and Kendrick Lamar is emblematic of something that's very deep in the West and in America. But yeah, I came with a lot to say, but I've been listening this whole time, so uh, so
I'm
sorry
gonna have
about
to
that.
let Jeremy take the wheel here because I don't even know who Kendrick Lamar is.
Well, and I didn't watch the Super Bowl because you could not find someone less interested in the Super Bowl than me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I didn't think Grail Country would necessarily be the place to talk about it,
Well,
but I've just been thinking about it.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I didn't see the performance. I didn't watch the game.
Who's
so.
Kendrick Lamar? Somebody fill me in.
He is the top rapper in America, hip hop
Wow.
artist. And he's won a Pulitzer Prize. And he made a song that became the anthem of Black Lives Matter. But yeah, so he's one of my favorite artists, just in terms of the craft of rapping and music. But many people, so there was nothing salacious or really that kind of crazy about his halftime performance, except for that. And this is something that Alex Jones caught on to. His biggest song of his whole career came after a rap battle with the artist known as Drake. And at the end of the rap battle and throughout it, the ante kept getting raised, and it pretty much ended in Kendrick Lamar accusing Drake of being a predator. And so the biggest song during the Super Bowl was kind of an anti-predator, and of course Alex. But this is Grail Country. This is Lives of the Saints. I feel bad for even talking about all of this now.
The Saints will meet us where we are.
Yeah.
I really wanted to talk about the cultural differences, and because that's what it was making me think of with that last saint in Japan. So, sorry to throw it way off. Forgive me.
It's okay. I don't know. Like, I don't know much about Japanese culture except for Shogun.
Let me show you some.
awesome.
I just pulled up. All I did was search for Japanese
No, it's very different.
Orthodox icon, and I'll show you some stuff that I found. That's kind of cool.
Okay, cool.
I love these. Yeah.
So,
look at that. Look at the background. Hey.
Yeah, the background is phenomenal.
Can you make those any bigger? Maybe full screen or thingy? No, eh? Okay, that's fine.
No, not really. It's a very small picture.
It's okay. It's okay.
So sorry.
No
Is this the one we're sharing? Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But this one was also very nice.
Wow. Is that the Theotokos?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Something about that is so sweet.
Yeah. And then this one is on a church on the outside.
Yeah.
That's Theotokos.
Yeah.
And then there was, let's see. This was, I don't know how to read any of that. So I'm not sure.
Is that maybe one of those, well, anyway, I don't know. This is a more modern looking guy, actually.
Yeah. Here's a larger version of that. No. Oh, there we go. There's a larger version of it.
Is this St. Nicholas that we just did?
Yes. This is St. Nicholas. Yep.
Nice.
So
he's kind of the St. Patrick of Japan.
Yeah. Now I also was looking on, so let's look up I also had the let's see, Japanese Orthodox Church. Let's just look
I
at the
like
interiors. Let's see it.
I like that his name was Saint Nicholas. Like he could pick up some of the slack for Santa Claus with
Yeah.
just like specifically like Nintendo.
Let's see. So this is an interior that looks pretty much like an Orthodox church, although not a lot of icons on the walls. You know, they do have the one there. Oh yeah, here's one. So yeah, you're right. There's fewer icons.
Japanese architecture is pretty minimalist too, right? Like honestly.
Yeah. Well, and you remember the whole, maybe you guys didn't see it, which would be for the better. I'm really captivated by Christians thinking and talking about aesthetics, and the way
Oh,
things
cool.
look and the way things feel. But there was a big hubbub when they redid Notre Dame, and the altar was like very minimalist and almost brutalist, you could say.
Yeah.
And a part of me wondered if, when I saw those Japanese Catholic churches, if there wasn't something to that where it was like,
No, I don't think you could make.
yeah,
Oh, the Japanese Catholic churches. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
maybe.
Oh, here we go. So this is the one I was looking at earlier. So you can see the iconostasis in the background. This looks very much like a Russian church.
Yeah.
Similar style of icons, the same style of iconostasis, stuff like that. So and I will say that there are definitely some minimalist like Roman Catholic churches in America too. I have a relative who goes to one, and you know, we attended there one time for her wedding, and it was there was no icons. It was just one main icon or one crucifix at the front. That was it. So you definitely see that more in Roman Catholic churches than in Orthodox churches.
yeah. And where I'm from in Savannah, there's one like big, beautiful cathedral, and then the rest of the church, like Catholic churches around town, if you know, besides the front where all the important stuff happens, you wouldn't be able to tell if it was a Baptist church or a Methodist church. You know, and
Yeah.
So
it's
here's
got
a question, McMo. Because I've been, I'm on the mailing list for Ralston College. Are they in Savannah, Georgia? They are.
yes,
Have you ever
yes.
been? Have you ever been?
Yeah, I actually attended they put on a play of I think it's the it was about Bacchus. I can't remember which play it was, but it was an old Greek play. And um I don't want to give too many secrets away as to why I wanted to be there at the time. But yeah, so I was able to get a ticket because a friend of mine um, who was not a fan of Ralston College and was doing some citizen research and trying to figure out what was going on with this place and why didn't it smell right to her, kind of a thing. Which now I'm afraid I've already given too much, but needless to say, but yeah, and not only that, but when this would have been when I was in college, because of my connection to Reformed University Fellowship in college. When I actually met with Stephen Blackwood in a little coffee shop. If my like, it could have been him, or it could have been another person trying to start a small conservative college in Savannah, and the chances of that are just like slim to none. So I'm fairly certain it was him, but now it's happened so long ago that I doubt myself. But yeah, I think that I met with him at a coffee, and he wanted me to make basically a commercial for Ralston College, like before it even really got its feet off the ground.
Right.
And I kind of told him that free labor was not the way to go with this situation. That he should probably like hire a professional instead of trying to get a college kid who was.
He had a dream, right?
He did. He really did. I mean, I was too busy at the time, though. I was a part of like three. I was going way too hard with ministries and churches and all of that. So,
I listened to. It was just a recorded conversation, so you couldn't watch anything. It was just audio. But I listened to a great Q&A with some of the students from there. One of them was Mormon Jeremy, actually, asking Ian McGilchrist questions because he did the Sophia lectures there, and he's also on their board. And Ian McGilchrist went to what's called All Souls College in the UK. I'm not sure if it's in Oxford or Cambridge, but it's in one of those university towns. It's somehow connected, but not. And All Souls, he's talked about this with Stephen Blackwood kind of in detail. And I think Stephen Blackwood wants to have something like that, where not entirely, like, you can go and work on a master's or whatever at Ralston now, but he wants to make available kind of a classical education. And the cool thing about McGilchrist's education at All Souls, I believe he was there for 7 years. And he said that when he got the scholarship for All Souls, he basically was told he could do whatever he wanted to do for 7 years with his time.
Wow.
And once a year he had to, or twice a year or something, he had to report to, a guy, maybe the dean of All Souls or whatever, answer a few questions and, write to them what it was he was doing. And he said basically he was just reading. And he was talking about, because somebody said, how do you engage the different hemispheres of the brain when you're thinking about what should I do with my life? Like, what do I do when I graduate? What do I do? Kind of future thoughts. And he said his answer was so interesting, because he said, I wouldn't think too much about it, because you really don't know what all this is for until you get there. Right. And then he used this example of these years, and he thought to himself later on in his life, because he started out with, what was it? Something, and then he went to literature, and then he went to medicine. And so he was really late in the game, in medical school and stuff. And he thought, oh man, all the time I wasted at All Souls, because all he did was read. He just read books, tons of books. But now he's like, I couldn't have written The Master and His Emissary and The Matter with Things without that 7 years at All Souls. Isn't that cool? Like all the reading that he did gave him such a scope of understanding. I don't know why I got onto that, but it just made me really appreciate even more, like, him, McGilchrist, and someone like Stephen Blackwood, who's trying to bring this kind of education back into existence, give it a life, because it's
so my interactions of it is that would make a lot of sense to me, because if it were somewhat like that, just in the sense that I was getting big homeschool vibes from the people I met that were a part of it. And I don't mean that necessarily in a bad way or a good way. It's just kind of, I mean it as they gave off the vibes of people who were homeschooled and were self-directed and loved to learn and wanted to keep that kind of style of learning, and study something like the classics, for instance, the great works. And but I don't know. I would be surprised if it were as kind of undirected as that sounded, and it makes me wonder.
No,
like,
it's not. I know, I'm aware of that. It's not undirected. Like, they have actual programs at Ralston College.
Yeah. And I do think that they were wanting more masters people in it too. But I think that it's very interesting, because in Savannah, it kind of serves, at least for the college-aged demographic in Savannah, as a minority in what otherwise is a massive more majority of SCAD students, which is the college I went to. It's the not liberal arts, but like art school that's incredibly left-wing liberal. And so it's kind of even interesting in this, like, way that Ralston is this minority trying to reclaim the quote unquote liberal arts, while you've got this like very this private art school that's like incredibly liberal.
Are they trying to reclaim the liberal arts or humanities? I think it's more humanities, no? Or is that the same?
Well, yeah, maybe I would. That would be a good question, I think, for Stephen Blackwood if he sees a difference in that. But I wasn't really speaking precisely. I was more just like
Yeah.
that's an interesting pun to me. So yeah,
Oh,
I don't even know what the distinction would necessarily be between the humanities and the liberal arts. Because the other thing, yeah, is that it was kind of confidently conservative, which makes sense in at one level in the city of Savannah, but like I said, the college age, that young adult demographic in Savannah is probably like 80% left wing. So yeah, very interesting. I have way more opinions on Ralston College than I should have as someone who doesn't go
well,
there and doesn't even live in Savannah anymore.
it's kind of like, well, when you ask someone about a local place, you'll get, does anything good come out of Nazareth? You always
Right.
get that, right? It just never fails. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Nathan, thank you so much. Nice to see you, Nathan. I've been enjoying your comments, by the way. Humanities are a part of liberal arts. You know, like McGilchrist was talking today about places like, you know, because they were talking about kind of what Paul Vanderklay would call stealing the culture, but they were doing it in more refined language, of course. And McGilchrist said, you know, it was, you know, the only thing that he could imagine actually being able to do that is to start more places like Ralston College in, you know, all over the place. And I do know from some of the Substacks that I subscribe to, that there is definitely a movement of people who are very interested in what Michael Martin would call hedge schools, which is what the Irish did when they were trying to educate the Irish out of them, right? But they would have secret schools for their children where they'd teach them Irish history and Irish folklore and Irish language, Gaelic and all that stuff.
Now, to bring back Michael Martin, are we just trying to recreate the monasteries? Are we trying to make more monks when maybe we need more knights?
What do you mean more monks?
Well, just, you know, that process that you're talking about made me think of just like starting monasteries, and even the part where you guys were talking about the Theotokos protecting Mount Athos. You know, I feel like that ties in.
Yeah. Well, I certainly don't think Michael Martin would be, you know, he doesn't talk about hedge schools as monasteries, for sure not. But independent ways of schooling your children. I mean, he was a Waldorf teacher for 16 years until, you know, they all got woke. and
Wokedorf.
Yeah. and now he's talking about hedge schools as a way of, you know, retaliating against those kinds of brainwashing techniques, right? When people try to okay. Reader is natural role in Oxford. A grade in membership of UK universities, like you see in Lewis movies. Yeah. And I don't, you know, right, that's right. And don't they know it?
Public school is catechism for lots of
The satanic
in
mill.
the world. Yeah.
As Blake would describe it. Yeah. I don't know what I was saying before, but I think this is interesting. Oh, that's what I was going to say. I've heard McGilchrist talk about when he went, and I don't know if it was All Souls, but I think he was first accepted into, like, with a scholarship when he was like 12 years old. Like, McGilchrist is he doesn't blow his own horn much, but he's a pretty smart guy.
He's a brilliant polymath.
I saw a movie recently called Surprised by Oxford, based on a memoir of a woman who went there and started reading C.S. Lewis. Interesting. Wogdorf's, yeah. Oh, are you really, Josh? Oh. Yeah. Very cool.
Well, and the only thing that keeps coming to mind with this talk of knights versus monks is that knights need a king to serve, or they are freelance.
Mm-hmm.
And a nation filled with freelance knights sounds pretty
terrifying.
Not good.
The word for those guys is vigilante, right?
Yeah. That's one word, right?
How about this? What's a freelance monk? Is that a mystic or a hermit?
Well, most actual monks are attached to a monastery.
And they have a spiritual father.
Some are not. Some are not.
Are there similarities between a freelance monk and a freelance knight? Similar dangers, temptations, something like that?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, they usually, I think
most monks don't get the blessing to be hermits or even to be alone. I mean, to be, on their own. I know one monk who runs a monastery in Denver, and he's the only monk there, but that's a very uncommon situation. And he's still in really close communication with other monks. And he travels a lot. So it's a very dangerous situation to be in the wilderness alone with yourself and demons. Is a very perilous situation.
Well, does that mean that this, and does Michael Martin mean that this is a fundamentally a problem or a conversation about single men? Is that kind of the stipulation?
No. And here's the thing. That's why I haven't got fully formed thoughts yet, but I'll tell you this much. When Michael first started talking about this, it rubbed me the wrong way, because it felt like, and I've had a conversation with Father Deacon Rick about this. He's if he's listening, because it felt like he was kind of throwing out monasticism completely. But I've come to understand, in just taking the time to listen to what he's saying, that that's not really the case. So, and I've been really curious, and I think it's even harder for me to understand because I'm not a man. Women are not knights, right? Men are. But I've been really trying to understand what he's going on about. And now some other voices have chimed in along with him, in cahoots with him, because Martin Shaw actually just mentioned that video in one of his Substacks and agreed with Michael Martin. Okay. So I'm like, well, what are these guys on about? Because here's the deal. I really trust them both. And I know that they have enough. I know that they have an image of something in their minds that they're trying to articulate, which is going to take a while, because that, for me to actually grasp it, like for it to form in front of me, right? And so I'm being really long suffering about it, because I feel like there's something really important there. What else could I say?
That sparked a new thought for me that I hadn't quite put together yet. It's a little dangerous, and but I wonder if it's not a problem, if it's not a response to what I've been trying to to point a finger towards, which is something like the abdication of responsibility, not by boomers or by millennials, but specifically by Gen X. And if you want to narrow it down to Gen X men, I think that would be an interesting conversation too. But there is something about that kind of masculinity problem
seeming to be somewhere between me and my dad's generation. My dad's a very young boomer. But he kind of was like, yeah, I didn't have too much problem, understanding myself as a man. And I kind of felt the same way growing up. Was like, I didn't really need, anybody to kind of affirm my masculinity or something.
Yeah.
But when I looked at dudes older than me, I saw a lot of that with the like emo rock stuff. And when my dad looked at people younger than him and a little older than him, when you look at the hippies or you look at some of the stuff in the 80s, that there was this weird kind of question apparently about masculinity. And you could probably point the finger to a lot of things about that, but I wonder if that kind of knight and monk conversation isn't kind of an outpouring of what's seen as a loss in the culture, which might be very specific to a particular generation. I don't know. That's just a hypothesis. I'm probably wrong about that.
I'm going to guess that it's not particular to a generation, because Michael is my age and he's been talking about this for 4 decades, probably straight, and written books and books about it. It's contingent on the loss of the feminine, the loss of the knight. and Nate made a reference in the recent panel discussion we had on the War in Heaven book by Charles Williams of how the knights had an image of the Virgin Mary on the inside of their shield. And so the shield was used to fight with and to guard against, right? To defend. But what it was that they were doing that for was on the inside. Okay. So and Michael said this actually in the conversation with Sebastian Morella, which I think everyone should watch. It's really good. That this is not about the loss of masculinity. This is about the loss of the feminine, of the divine feminine in the world. And it's really interesting because, and I just downloaded this book. You can't see it, but I downloaded a book this evening that I read in 1985 when it came out. Okay. And it's called, what's it called now? The Way Home, Beyond Feminism. So this woman was a feminist in the 70s when feminism was just really, really getting going, right? It's really, and she talks about some of the get-togethers that they had, and these were like founding members of a very radical form of feminism, and it was really about mother goddess worship. So she describes one of the meetings that they had with, various people where they were in a church, jumping up and down on the pews with, topless, right? And chanting something about the goddess. And that they were encouraged to set up little idols in their house with a mirror so they could see themselves as goddesses. And so she became a Christian and wrote this book called The Way Home. And she uses a verse from Titus to talk about, like, this was kind of the foundation for the whole book. And I'm just going through it again because that book never left me alone. And one of the things that she said in that book was in this verse, and I was just trying to find it so I could read it. Let me just see if I can find the verse, because it's the premise of the whole book. It's in Titus, and we're getting there. We're finding it. Okay. Likewise, teach the older women to be reverent in the way they live, not to be slanderers or addicted to much wine. Oh, wait, no, is that it? Oh, maybe. This book is an exposition of the Bible's mystery passage, she says, Titus 2, 3-5. Likewise, teach the older women to be reverent in the way they live, not to be slanderers or addicted to much wine, but to teach what is good. Then they can train the younger women to love their husbands and children, to be self-controlled and pure, to be busy at home, literally home working, to be kind and to be subject to their husbands, so that no one will malign the word of God. And that's what the whole book is based on. And I, guarantee you that a lot of women certainly don't want to hear that verse, especially modern women, right? But she makes a case for this idea of working at home and home working and what that means.
What's interesting to me, sorry.
But one thing I just want to add, and then I'll let you roll, is that she also goes back to a verse, and I don't remember where it is. I haven't come across it yet, where when the women leave their natural, and I don't know the word, I can't remember the word, I think it's tendencies or affections or something to that effect, men turn in lust for one another. And she demonstrates that it's not women turning in lust to one another that causes the men to lust for one another. It's women leaving their role in the home that's described in Titus, okay? And, this woman is not a fundamentalist as far as I can tell. I don't remember. It was 1985 when I read the whole book. That's why I'm reading it again. She's not like rad trad. She's making a really interesting argument here. I think that is nuanced enough that I should revisit it personally. Because she's saying that the turning away of women from their God-given and beautiful and important and equal status, right? But different, has precipitated all this other stuff. It's upstream. The woman abandoning that is upstream from all this other stuff, okay? And I think that that's a valid argument, actually. So, yeah, I'm reading the book again because here's the deal. I'll just give you a little hint about the Sebastian Morello conversation. So Sebastian got very vulnerable in that conversation, and he's been promoting this idea of knighthood, and he basically said that he went to seminary, and in this Catholic seminary, he's Catholic, it was just full of homosexuals. He said and these are his words, he said, the priesthood in the Catholic Church is a cesspool of homosexuality. And, when I heard that, this book came to my mind, because I'm like, oh, the men turn in lust one to another, right? When the woman leaves her God-given, beautiful, feminine role, And I'm still chewing on all this, guys. Like, I'm still trying to figure this out, but I think there's something really important here, because like what I'm seeing, it's not an over feminization, actually, the response. It's an over masculinization. Like, in response to all of this, women are becoming more masculine, and men, in their feminization, let's say, are replacing women. Like Michael Martin was talking about this in our Shakespeare course, where the woman of the year this year was a man. The woman of the year was a man, right? And something else. He mentioned something else. I can't remember. Anyway, it's all very interesting. So there you go. Lots of food.
Yeah. One thing that kept coming up for me was just the way in which I know when me and my wife first got married, the way she would take an idea like that versus how she might take it now. And both of my wife.
Yeah.
And then both of those kind of stood in in stark contrast to who the scripture was actually written to or for, that it's not that scripture was not actually written to young women. It was actually written to the older women. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
there's a sense in which it's even the older women and the crone, and it's their responsibility to kind of use the powers of the shadow matriarchy to make loving your husband cool. Like that there's some failure on the part of the grandmother
Yeah,
that's afoot here.
well, no, it's not a problem. It's a responsibility for the older women to teach the younger women. And Camille Paglia has been talking about this for a long time, that women have lost that. They've lost because first of all, they're all going out to work. Like they're completely, atomized individuals, right? They don't belong anymore to village life, because they're not working at home. And this is the premise of the book. This is about home working. So the woman is actually earning a living at home. And if you read Proverbs 31, that's what she does. She buys and sells vineyards. She's dyeing textiles. She's got mills happening. She's busy, right? But it's all centered around the home. So and in the little bit of reading I was able to do this evening, she talked about how in the 50s it was a status symbol for men to have wives who were idle. Their children were in school and they had all these, appliances, so they didn't have any work to do, right? And there was something really interesting about this, the 50s were, the pinnacle of science and progress and all this, invention. And so now look, my wife doesn't even have to work, right? She can just stay home. And then you got movies like Valley of the Dolls, where all these women are popping pills, happy pills, right? Because they're bored out of their mind and they live in suburbia. So they're all separated from each other, right? They don't have any community and they don't have any older women to teach them anything, Like I know that this is missing for women. I know this.
Yeah, I think that second part is, I would probably say that that's more important, or at least there's a bigger loss, I think, in more people. There's more suffering caused by lack of community than a failure to focus on the home, maybe we'll say, or it's easier to see because my wife just recently got a new job at well, not that recently, but for the last year or so, she's been a receptionist at a nail salon.
Mhm.
And she has basically been completely welcomed and brought into this small Vietnamese community here in North Carolina. And she's like, basically, it's like she hasn't felt this kind of safe and secure and taken care of since we were at the big mega church and she had all of these friends and family nearby, And so, and that has been the biggest improvement on both of our qualities of life. And it happened around the same time I started participating in TLC. So it was kind of like we both kind of found our people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, but that also includes we go over to to their house, like my wife's boss and their big families, holiday parties. And so there's this cultural experience, but they're so used to being around each other in these big groups with kids and old people and everything in between. And yeah, so it's very, I think that of all the things we've lost, that's probably the biggest contributor to some of the stuff that you're pointing to, because, and that's not just with that's even within churches. And because I think that even in churches, it's less like women's Bible study, and now you'll have young adults, and you'll have moms, and then you'll have one group for older people. And so it's all of this separation and trying to get down to the Dunbar number, because the society we live in has atomized us and pushed us apart. And it's not just in the suburbs; it's in dense populated areas as well. It's the whole bowling alone thing, right? You don't talk to anybody on the subway. You don't talk to anybody at the laundromat. You might talk to the person behind the counter when you're checking out somewhere. And then you have your friends that you have to impress and that are a part of a social scene that you need to maintain your reputation in, so these are all just like intertwined. It's a leviathan of
Very,
of
very
issues.
tangled web that we have woven. Yeah. I just wanted to say hi to Eugene. Welcome, Eugene.
Hi guys, I've been following sort of.
Cool. Have you got any
Yeah.
thoughts?
Well, what you were talking about recently about the divine feminine really brings to mind this whole scene of Baron meeting Luthien in the Silmarillion, because Luthien's dance is really like an embodiment of Sophia, basically. At least that's how it reads to me. And that's what made Baron strong, and what brought out that knighthood in him. And
Right.
she was following. I mean, they were together to the end, and they went on this quest to get the Silmaril, and it's just amazing that how Tolkien was able to show that basically how do you say this? Well, Baron couldn't have done and couldn't have been who he is without that dance, without that enchantment.
Right. Yeah, like after listening to Sebastian, I haven't finished it yet, but I've been just chewing on what I heard so far from him. He describes his experience in this seminary. He describes what he's seeing in the priesthood in the Catholic Church. And his response to it is a call to knighthood. And so I'm asking myself, what does he mean by knighthood? What is that? What is that to him? Right? And I think it is husband and father. A husband and a father is a knight, right? He's willing to lay down his life for those who are not able to protect themselves and who also belong to the future, right? They are the world to come, so to speak. And like Phoebus says here, and maybe a call to fertility. It's all about fertility. Women have given up fertility, right? For so that they can be men, essentially, because the only jobs they ever want to do are men's jobs. But they have jobs that are different, but not unimportant. But for some reason, they've been made unimportant, right? And so, and of course, look at us now, right? All fertility rates have dropped. And children are being raised in daycares with strangers who probably are underpaid and frustrated. So God only knows what's happening to them in those places, Anyway, it's just really interesting. But I think that that's what Sebastian is seeing as a knight. I think that husband and father is what a knight is. I can also imagine that's what Michael Martin sees as a knight, not as some vigilante kid, who wants to go and find a rad trad wife, but an actual man, right? But to be a man, you also need a woman. And if there aren't any, I don't know. I'm just like thinking out loud. It's really, really, because like McMo said, it's such a tangled web, right? So, and I found this woman's thesis fascinating to me because in a sense, because Michael Martin keeps saying it's the loss of the feminine, right? This is really about the loss of the feminine, not the loss of the masculine. And that's exactly what she's pointing at, that the women have left off and no longer want to fulfill that God-given place equal next to their husband, right? Yeah. So anyway.
I wonder what made this feminine energy unattractive. What do you think? I mean, apparently, women don't want to be women because that, somehow this whole idea of being a woman and being full of the divine Sophia is not attractive for some reason.
It's
And
weird.
I wonder about that.
I have a couple of theories on that. I think
I really want to give you one of my cough drops. Do you want one?
Yeah, I know. I really need one. Woo! I went for like those cold walks the last couple of days are getting to me.
Yeah.
I'd give him a hot tea.
Yeah, that'd be good too. I think there's a couple of things that come to mind, but really, I mean, my wife and I talk about this sometimes about, after World War II, you had a lot of men come home. There was a real emphasis on, there was World War I and World War II were fundamentally, like, psychologically so devastating that they changed everything. And we lost a lot of good men.
Yes.
Right. The knights you're talking about, the ones who are willing to sacrifice themselves to protect what they believe in, to protect their nation, their people, their families. A lot of them, millions of them were killed. So we lost that we lost that example. We lost the genetic side of it and the cultural side of it. Both were wiped out. I mean, not eliminated, but definitely drastically devastated.
Yeah, like many were traumatized too after that.
Right. I was going to say, and the ones who came home, the ones who survived it, saw horrible things that had never been experienced in human history. The way that they waged war in World War I especially was just unspeakable. And so when they got home, there was a lot of messed up stuff going on.
Yeah.
And you had all the acting, you had the alcoholism, you had the abuse, and you had the adultery. And frankly, women got sick of it. They didn't know how to deal. And at the same time, they were being pushed into suburbs. We were being atomized, even at that point, right? Because it was all being pushed toward the economic machine. It was all being pushed toward efficiency, right? Because that's basically what the managerial class and liberalism like settled on as a religion was efficiency. And it's way more efficient to have more workers than fewer. And so let's get women in there because then we'll keep the cost of labor down, right?
Yeah,
you can also pressure there, and women were happy to leave home because they were tired of getting beaten by their drunken husband who came home again after
that makes a lot of sense.
Staying late at work with his secretary.
It's easier for a group of people to get on the treadmill than it is to face their problems. For some people, it's easier for us to face our problems than get on the treadmill, but that varies person by person. But for societies, that treadmill is such a useful tool to keep the mass depression down. It's like you don't have time to worry about the fact that your life is meaningless and you've got no hope. You've got to get up and go to work and support the people you love and all that stuff. And so, but when we worked on farms, it was we reaped what we sowed a lot closer, right? There wasn't and there was
also more dependency on each other. Like I can just say that from my own perspective. Like I've had some rocky moments in my marriage where, we weren't sure if we were going to stay married. And, but I'm telling you, thinking about maintaining this place by myself, I'm just like, no, we got to work this out. We have to, right? Either that or we give up everything. And that, but see, people who live in an apartment in New York City and have both got good paying jobs, they don't have to give up anything except this annoying person in their life, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I just wanted to kind of close my thoughts that the
Sorry.
problem we had, I mean, I think the psychological devastation that took place on our culture, we're still grappling with it. We're still paying the price for it.
Mm-hmm.
And it, but I do have to say, you know, to be fair to women at the time, they were tired of living under the dark side of masculinity, which is when drunkenness and tyranny, and that couldn't be healed in time to stop the flow, you know. And Cassandra made the point as well that yes, women, because of World War II, started working to take up the slack when all the men left to go fight in war. And yeah, it's just everything got thrown into chaos, and we're still trying to grasp and grapple with what it even now we are trying to grasp with what it means to be masculine and feminine. And you know, because right along with women leaving the home, another thing, women, this is going to sound really, I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it.
Say it.
So in the 40s and 50s, or well, I guess right in the 60s is when women stopped wearing head coverings to church as well.
Mm-hmm.
All women wore head coverings. It wasn't just the Catholics, it wasn't just the Orthodox, it was the Protestants too. All the women were wearing hats. And then in the 50s and 60s, that went away. And it was this shedding of the traditional role because, and I have to say, I'm not blaming them because of living under tyranny and drunkenness, right? Like Samson, right? They were living with Samson. That's why women left the home. What was Samson? Samson was hyper masculine, right? He was with the prostitutes. He's super strong. He's a giant. And he was glorious, and he was incorrigible, and he didn't care. And he was prone to drunkenness, right? All like women were tired of living with Samson. And so they threw off the veil and they entered the workforce and started acting like men because they thought this is the only way I'm going to get out from under this tyranny.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I get it.
I love that you brought up the Samson thing because you were saying like one's tempted to think that because those who lived through the war experienced things that had never happened before in humanity that the situation was fundamentally different because it's not just a Samson and Delilah problem, it's also the Adam and Eve problem. And I wonder if this would shed light on one of the things that Sherry's pointing to, which is there is a sense of like the masculine's abdication of responsibility and the woman's reaching out for the fruit and being seduced by the serpent. And so
well, there's another verse. I'm just going to squeeze this in here, McMill. There's another verse that says, men love your wives, women honor your husbands, right? From St. Paul.
Yeah.
And there's an order to that, right? Like that's been pointed out to me anyway. You know, that in order to honor something, you have to be valued by that, right? Like, and so there is a responsibility to love, whatever that means, right? But it has to be good. And then in response to that, because this is what life is a call and a response, right? It's a call and response. Then the wife can honor, right, the husband. But like, I don't think there's an easy solution. I don't even know where you'd even want to start pulling on which thread, you know, like it's to figure that out. But I do think that Michael Martin and Sebastian Morello and Martin Shaw and, you know, many others are really pointing at something that's really, really important. And I just want to listen. I feel privileged to be able to listen in to this very masculine conversation about the loss of the feminine.
Yeah. Agreed.
You know?
Yeah.
It's important. It's really important. And I mean, I think we're right in the throes of how tragic it is with, you know, right now.
I think one of the biggest problems, and I have 3 daughters. So I have a little more insight into this than I did 20 years ago, or 25 years ago. But I would say that I think one of the big problems for young men right now is that they don't know how to make women feel safe. And when women don't feel safe, they go crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And they keep trying to go crazy, not really on purpose, but kind of to try to wake you up so that you step up and calm them down. Right? Like women, it's like they just keep raising the stakes, waiting for the guy to step up and go, no, everything's gonna be okay, but we're not gonna do that. Let's just have a cup of tea. Right. And so they just keep escalating. And I made this mistake when I was young. Yeah, I know, McMill, crazy wife skill issue. Yeah, you're right. I was a slow learner. It took me a long time. But living with 3 women or 4 women at one time will definitely teach you a lot.
Well, the more
you, masculine
it's actually very
and
easy,
feminine.
Jeremy. It's very easy to see, right? The weaker sex, the one that has no upper body strength, right, is only safe when she's covered.
Right.
Right. And the farther away that covering gets, the more vulnerable she is and terrified.
Right.
Right. It's just that simple. Like, really. And nobody has to be aware of it. It just has to be happening.
Right.
Mostly no one's aware. She doesn't know why she's so neurotic. He doesn't know why she's so neurotic. Right. But it's really just about this. That's what it's about.
So something's occurring to me that I don't think I've really put 2 and 2 together before, which is, so when me and my wife were engaged, we read a lot of marriage books, and I probably read twice as many as she did, because she just would get disgusted with the kind of, well, that's one of my points, is that we felt there was a lack of kind of, we didn't have the language for this then, but looking back, there was certainly a type of cookie cutter way in which all the things you're saying, Sherry, were kind of applied. So that like if you weren't a gym bro and your wife wasn't the perfect trad wife, then you were less than, you were failing, you were not a biblical marriage. And it was easy to get that kind of vibe, or I guess, or sense from a lot of the books that, at least the Protestant church that we were a part of was using. And I read a lot of great books at that time too. But what's interesting to me at this point is that, like, there's a sense in which, and I'll bash on the Protestants, so you guys don't have to, but that
we love them. We love the Protestants.
But there is a real sense in, like, the big Eva, that they're using the tools of mass formation that were used in World War II and that we kind of learned in World War II. And what that does is it atomizes you, but it takes away your actual individuality. It's like, it's not enough for you to be separated from everybody else. You also have to be like everybody else. And it's that kind of double bind, I think, that is coming up here, because and that's the same double bind that scares me about the knights and the monks conversation is, I can already tell that there's going to be people that's like, bro, you don't even joust. Like, if you can't beat so and so down the street in jousting, then, like, why are you even being a knight? And I guess that's a point, maybe to not bash on my Protestantism, but there is a sense in which the problem almost always comes down to the individual's propensity to sin and forget God and want to be his own or her own God and make his own decisions. And so there, it's almost, to me, I guess, when I get thinking like this, it's like, is this a wars and rumors of war situation, or the poor you shall always have with you? Are we just kind of Chicken Little because we live in a fallen world? But also, now that Phoebus is here, I feel like I can shut up because he's going to say all the right things.
Yeah, Phoebus, let's hear from you.
Nice
to have you.
Thank you. How's my mic?
Good.
I was just going to tell a story. 2 weeks ago, I guess, we were at church for and there was a membership meeting. There was a whole bunch of new people. So we were going through, and you kind of have to explain some of the church's stances. So one of the things that always comes up is women in office. And so this church doesn't allow women elders or deacons or pastors. And there was quite a few women in the room. And so the pastor kind of explained his spiel, and he took a really middle road because he talked about the complications in the Bible where women do have roles of leadership and whatever, but the church doesn't do that. Anyways, that's not the point. So then he opened it up to the women first, and the women that all spoke up were all, say, mid-30s, mid-40s, older, and they all had kids. And all of them spoke up very, very positively about this structuring. And there was a bunch of younger women in the room too that were totally shocked. And there was questions like, well, what if a woman is really talented? You know, what's she supposed to do? And you could just see like how broken the whole vision was of like, well, if you're a talented woman, you're supposed to be at the top or something, or you're supposed to be in charge or whatever it was. Anyways, what I took away from it, because what these I think what was missed from the room was the three ladies that spoke up, and my wife was one of them. They had, sorry, I'm a little bit sick. They had all basically been changed by having kids. So every single one of them, if you knew their story, was the feminist, whatever. Like my wife grew up ultra progressive, went to school for social work in Toronto. That was like her dream.
Yeah.
The most progressive thing you can do in Canada, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think the younger women sort of missed it, but all the older women had already walked that path.
Yeah.
And sort of decided. And I guess the question is, what is that thing that changes you? And maybe you guys just answered it, because the childbearing thing makes you way more vulnerable.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was just so apparent in that room that those young girls will probably get there in like 10 years, but it was so hard to see in that moment, or explain to them that, especially with Christian hierarchy, being at the front is not the best job. So, yeah. Anyways.
Phlebas, Michael Martin mentioned the two extremes that we have now in women. We've got the OnlyFans girl, and then we've got the rad trad wife, And when he mentioned that, I was thinking to myself, it's almost like the feminine is seeking a way back, right? Because both of these are not the feminist from the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, right? These are like ultra feminine roles, really. Like one is seductive, the other is, I don't know, functional.
Well, it's also seductive, I think.
I guess seductive too, because it's so useful. But it's like they're trying to find their way home, right? And that's what the book is that I'm reading. It's called The Way Home by Mary Pride. If anybody's interested, I wouldn't mind if I had some fellow readers, because like I said, it's been a long time since I read this book, but it really impressed me because it was looking at more of a metaphysical, spiritual root to the problem, right? Of course, we've been influenced. Women have been turned into consumers and also workers, right? So that the hive is just, functioning at the best capacity, for capitalism that there is. They also discovered women do all the shopping. So anyway, those were some other random thoughts that were going through my mind this week, because this has really been, like, honestly, I read that book when my oldest daughter was 2. I wasn't even married at the time, but I had a very keen sense that because I had had a child, Phlebas, that this was a very sacred role that I had. And it elevated me, even though I wasn't married, it elevated me spiritually. Like, it gave me such purpose and such conviction about how important it was, and I remember thinking, if I was to give my child to a daycare, I don't know what's going in to my child. So that means when I bring my kid home, I never know what's going to come out. And that's, and if I put them in school, then they're going to, they're not done with this from the age of like 3 till 17. And all this stuff is coming in, and I'm going to have to deal with all the outgoing stuff, but I don't even know where it came from. So I made a decision really early on in my life that whatever goes into my child, I'm going to be fully aware of it. I'm going to be the one that puts it there. Right. So that I know what to expect when stuff comes out. It might not come out in the same shape, but I can probably trace it back to, something. And I felt like really honored. And then I had another experience where I was listening to a speaker, and he said, how many people here want to be missionaries? And I was like, because that was the Protestant thing to do, right? And then he leaned in and he goes, what if you've been called to be a parent? And I was like, oh, that's boring. And then I went, wait a minute, I am a parent. Perhaps that's my calling. And then I started to, as a woman, that is my calling. Like, and I can't think of anything more important. I just can't. Call me a rad trad. I don't care.
Yeah.
My priest said something similar about church, where there's some people who really want to have something to do, and they are too busy. Like they want to be involved, and they feel like they need to be involved in the church. And he said, mostly we just need you to be here and pray. Most of you only need to be here, and you only need to pray. And that's enough. Like that's all we need. and that's enough. Like that's, you don't have to
that's a lot, actually. Because
yeah.
If that's the position that you're in, then you are basically an open vessel for God to use.
Right.
I've been listening to this Ukrainian philosopher I told you about, Alexander Filonenko. He has a couple of interesting lectures on fatherhood and motherhood, just the two types of energy. And really, what's interesting to me is that when you were talking about the need for safety, right? Safety and security. And the further the covering goes, the more the woman feels vulnerable and unsafe, right? But he also talks about the mystery of motherhood, and he kind of brings it down to the mystery of the mother's hand. He basically says that every child knows that if they have to go through a dark room alone, it's a disaster. But if the mother is there and holds their hand,
right, Lucas, thank you.
Yeah, bye. And holds their hand, then everything is fine immediately. Somehow, I mean, the child knows that the mother is not a match to all those monsters that are probably lurking there in that dark room. But they feel safe anyway. And I remember that totally. And
Yeah.
my daughter tells the same thing, and we kind of, helped her in that way, deal with a dark room that way. So he calls it the phenomenon of the mother's hand, because the child totally knows that the mother is not a match to the monsters, but
Right.
somehow it gives him or her the security, an amazing security that she's there. And
Yeah.
there's a very interesting kind of back and forth of energy between the feminine and masculine.
You
And he
know
also
what?
has a lecture about the fatherhood. But yeah, go ahead, Sherry.
Well, you're just reminding me of, so like, the mother's hand and the child, right? And the child, I mean, I think what's important to the child is the heart. The relationship that the mother and the child share with each other is the heart. That the mother knows when the heart is broken. The mother knows when the heart is full of fear. Like that's what they share, mother and child. And so when the child is young and is afraid, all it needs is someone to share its heart, right? But I remember a time when my son was getting right into that bar mitzvah age and age of initiation in primitive tribes, where literally that's when they metaphorically cut the umbilical cord from the mother, from the son, right? The son and the mother, they get separated. Hard, like it's a hard separation too, because it's just like from one day to the next. But my son, so we were living in Telegraph Creek, and there was a guy, was not a good person. He was actually a known rapist and probably a murderer, but it had never been proven. And he started showing up at our house when my husband was away. And so I had been warned about him. And one time my husband left really early in the morning for a trip, a 700-kilometer one-way trip to the nearest town. And he left like in the dark. And this guy worked somewhere along the road that he noticed my husband leaving. So he showed up at 7:30 in the morning, knocking on our door. And my son said, "Mom, it's," named the guy. And he goes, "Should I get the gun?" He was 11 going on 12, my son. And I said, "No, you should not get the gun. You should tell him Mommy and Daddy are still sleeping." Which wasn't true because my husband was gone. But and my son looks at me, he goes, "Oh, good one." But he was my protector, right? I was shocked when he said that. "Should I get the gun?" I'm like, no. But I was also really grateful because now my little boy was covering me, right? And I felt like I was vulnerable. Like it would have been a martyrdom scene because honestly, we would have all been sacrificed at that point because I couldn't protect my children, So, but thank God.
And that's knighthood right there. That's knighthood.
That is it. Yes.
When an 11-year-old boy is willing to take up a gun to protect his mother, that's knighthood.
Cry.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I unfortunately, you can continue on, but I do have to leave. We had one of the founders of our parish passed, and we're reading the tradition is to read the psalm. Her body is in the church, and people are reading the psalms over her body the entire time until the funeral, and so that's the all-night vigil of the psalms,
right,
which is tonight, and we're participating in that.
Okay, good.
So
that's beautiful.
I have to head out.
Yeah,
so.
I have to go.
Yeah,
too.
yeah, me too. Should go.
Well, thank you.
So yeah, no, thanks for joining, Eugene, and thank you, Sherry, for creating the space for us to come here and talk about the lives of the saints. It's always a pleasure. I really enjoyed the conversation tonight. So
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sorry I brought up, opened a can of worms, but yeah. Thanks a lot.
no, it's
No,
good.
that was good. That was good.
It's
Thank
good.
you. I
Loved
appreciate
it. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
Loved it.
Thanks a lot.
Good.
Have a good night. Thank you.
All right.
See you
Well,
again.
we'll see you. Bye, Eugene.
See
See
you.
ya.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye. And good night to everybody. Thanks for joining us. Sorry we have to quit so abruptly, but
Yeah, I'm sorry. And you guys could continue, but I have to. I do have to
I
go.
will not sit here alone.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm sorry. I would love to keep talking, but we do have to.
Okay, Jeremy. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, and good night.
Thanks a lot.